Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome to the second Qualtrics working group meeting. So in this one today, I wanted to talk through mailing lists. That popped up as something that a few of you wanted to hear about. So I know some of you may not have used mailing lists before, and some of you may have used them a bit more extensively. There have also been some recent changes to how mailing lists can work too. So I wanted to show you those things as well. So make sure you got the most up-to-date info. And I want to do this as a bit of a live demo. So I'm logged in as me over here in Qualtrics. And I've also got some slides here just to talk us through. So I'll put all of this up on the Teams link along with the video, the link to this video. So please feel free to jump in if you are watching the recording and you couldn't make the meeting today. No worries. Hello. As always, ask any questions on the Teams group as well. I was going to say one other thing I was thinking about doing with these is maybe opening them up to others. I don't want this to necessarily be an exclusive group. Like I'd love your help in terms of sharing these with your schools, but why don't we open them up as well? So I'm going to talk to a few people internally about that and how that might work. But let's talk about mailing lists. So the whole idea here is that sometimes we're going to have people's contact information. Now, a lot of the time, or we might capture it in a survey. And a lot of the time when we do surveys, we might just have a survey link and put it out there. Like it could be, on social media or, various other ways. But what about if we've been, researching with people before and they've agreed to take part in future research? Or what about if we want people to sign up for like a multi-stage project where they're going to do a few things along the way and we want to capture their email address early on? We might not know it in advance. Sometimes we'll have email addresses in advance. Sometimes we won't. And I want to talk about like how those two different scenarios might work and how we can use them. So let's have a look. I've got some points here that I'm going to work through, which is like setting up a mailing list from pre-existing contacts, from contact information which we've captured during a survey. So let's say we did put a survey out there on social media or whatever. And as part of that, people had the opportunity to give us their email address. We can build that and automatically capture that into a list that we can use to send, say, a follow-up survey or just have them on file for future work. We can do all that sort of stuff too. I'll talk a little bit about customized data in mailing lists. This is something that's not necessarily particularly well understood, but this is really helpful. So this is where we can, capture questions out of a survey or add information to our directories to sort of say, this person is a man and this is their age, or this person takes part in gambling, or this person, took part in this particular previous study or whatever. And we can build that into our mailing lists and we can use that to determine who we contact in the future. We'll talk about how we actually distribute surveys, like once we've got people's contact details, how we use that going forward to send out more surveys. And I'll show you a couple of little tricks around that too. Let's say you don't want to send from within Qualtrics. Most of the time you want to, but sometimes you might not. Talk about what reports you see when you use distributions and also sending reminders. So this is one of the most powerful things using directories is it keeps track of who's actually completed the survey for you so that when you send a reminder, it'll only send it to people who haven't completed it. They might have started it and not finished it, or they might not have started it at all. And you can send those things really automatically in here. So that's where I want to head today. Let's see how much we get through. Jump in with any questions along the way. Sound all right? Yeah. Okay, so one important thing is one of the things that we often have used in this space is a thing called contact list triggers. So I'm going to jump into a survey to show you what I'm talking about, because I think I've even done videos on this before. When you go into options, I think it is, yep, post survey, there are triggers here. There's email triggers and contact list triggers, and contact list triggers used to be here. And what this meant was you could do a thing where if you captured someone's email address, you could just do this really simple thing, like click a thing here to add them to a directory. But Qualtrics has been working on this stuff called workflows, which is far more advanced. Offers all the things that contact list triggers used to offer, but now with a lot more options as well. So if you are using contact list triggers in any of your surveys, they'll stop working, I think, in December, and you'll need to update them to workflows. So if you've got any like ongoing surveys that use those things, you'll need to change. Going forward, you can't even do contact list triggers anymore. So if you're doing a new survey, you just have to use this workflow thing. And it's not hard. Like I'll show you how to do it. It's just a little bit of a change. So I'm just flagging that for any of you who have existing surveys that use these triggers. It's an important thing to be aware of. Okay, so directories. When this is like the main Qualtrics menu for you here, and look, I've probably got a few extra things in here compared to what you see because I've got like admin and stuff. But what you will probably be most aware of is projects, which takes you to this screen, which lists all of your surveys that you have access to. And you've got folders over here that you might use, or like you can look them up based on who shared a survey with you. And there are various other things here like catalogs. This is like and libraries and things here where you can store lists of questions and graphics and all those things that you might use over and over. And we're going to talk about those more in the future because I want to, I've been already talking to you a little bit about those, like developing these lists of questions that everyone has access to. But the one we want to use today is this one called directories. So if you click into this, your directory screen, again, might look a little different to mine. You probably have nothing in there. I have overview of all of the directories in the uni, and I can see like how much work is happening in, mail outs and things. So you probably won't see this when you first log in. But so here we can go. There's been, a whole bunch of emails going out and things. I think the last time I checked this, it was like a couple of 100,000 emails have been sent out. So this is like, for example, our team who contact alumni or whatever, tend to use these quite a lot. So I can see all that. You shouldn't be able to. Where we go is we have this thing called directory contacts, and a directory. So there's different things here, right? So there's directories, lists, segments, and samples. And so I want to talk through those a little bit to describe what they are. Now, if I click on directory contacts, you will see all of the people in my directory, no matter like what list they're in or anything. Now, again, because I'm admin, I have access to a lot of directory contacts, so I can't really show you that because I'd be showing you a whole bunch of people's email addresses that you shouldn't see. But what I can do is take you, but that's where you can see everybody, and that's where you can manage them. You can say, let's say someone wants to change their email address, you could go in there and do that, if they contacted you, for example. What we have though is this segments and lists section, which is where you can create these things called segments or lists or samples. And I want to explain what they are because these are particularly powerful. So directory is your overall list of contacts, but you can put them into lists. And so I have a whole bunch of lists in here that I've used for different types of surveys. So let's say, for example, I want to send an email out to a group of people, but I only want to send it to like 100 people first up, just to, do a little soft launch, make sure nothing's wrong. I might create a little list here of 100 people, ended up being 99 in the end, and send it to them first. And then I might create a list with the rest of the people there that I'll send it out to once I'm happy with how the distribution's going. So lists, and you might have different lists for different projects. So you might make a list of people who are, in your directory who are interested in taking part in the project that or the survey that you're about to send them. So rather than sending, an email to everyone in your directory, you can put people into little subgroups. Now, lists are static. Once you've set up a list of people, that list doesn't change. Segments are this other thing, which I haven't used a lot yet in my stuff here, but I've used elsewhere, which are more dynamic. So you can set up things in your directory, like variables, which I'll show you what I'm talking about in a sec, on someone's age and gender. And then as more people join the directory, the segments will update automatically. So, lists are static. You have to update those every time you want to. And so I use that because usually I want that level of control. But if you want something to update dynamically as more and more people sign up for your survey, then that's what you want segments for. And you can set up sends to them instead. So I really like segments and I do use them a lot. But often when I'm doing things, I'm working off an existing list and lists just work for me. Samples are the same kind of idea. They're like a subgroup of your people, and they can be based on segments or lists. So you can specify that you want to send to like a random selection of 100 people on your list, or a random selection of 10% of your list, or you can select numbers or percentages. And it can be based on either segments or lists, whatever you feel is most appropriate for you. So for me, because I'm a control freak and I like to have control over exactly who something's going out to, I use lists for this. Whereas, if you're doing this ongoing project where more and more people are signing up and you just want to keep sending things out to everyone and not having to update your lists over and over again, segments are more for you. Samples are probably better for like a company, that's doing like product testing or something, or just getting a small number of people to respond as opposed to their full list. I think most of the time researchers will use lists or segments. So does that kind of make sense, the difference between these things? Yeah. And I think for a lot of you, in terms of like those ongoing kind of projects that you do where you're building lists, or segments are probably better for you. So that's what I like about this sort of section. Now, in your directory as well, you can also go and see a list of your distributions, which is a whole list of all the emails that have gone out. And once you click on them, you can also see, all right, I sent this out to 90 people, and 3 people responded. This was like a third follow-up. I was amazed we even got 3 people with this. We'd sent it out a few times. Some people had responded, some people hadn't. It'll tell you things like, how many emails have bounced. So this is like if an email inbox is full, or if the email address is no longer valid, someone might have left a company, then it will bounce. You can see an open rate. You can see how many people actually clicked through to the survey and started it, and how many completed. You'll also sometimes see complaints here, and complaints is, sometimes in your email inbox, it will say something like, unsubscribe from this list at the top. That's a complaint, they call it these days. So that's that idea. People just saying, I don't want to be on this list. And we'll talk about unsubscribes and all that in a sec too. But so you can click on these and get a sense of how it all went. And you'll see there's different ones in here, like reminders and personal links, and I'm going to talk about those too. But any questions so far on directories and what we might use them for? We're going to talk about setting them up in a sec, but I'm just seeing if anyone's got any issues or questions that they want to ask just yet. All good?
All good.
Lovely. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the segments and lists section, and let's talk about importing existing contacts. So let's say, you've been doing things outside of Qualtrics. Let's say you've got a list of emails in Outlook or something like that, for example, or you've got a few people who are willing to take part in a trial for you or something like that. This is how you get people into directories, or into lists. Okay, so you can put them in the directory in the first place, but I find lists or segments really, really important because the directory is unfiltered. It's just everybody who you've ever added into Qualtrics. So to set up a list, we just create a list. All right, nice and simple. We click in the list section and create a list, and we'll give it a name. So I'm going to call this demo setting up just to show you, how the setting up bit works. I've got a couple of other demo lists that I'm going to work with as we go. So that's pretty simple. And from here we go confirm. And then it'll say, hey, this list doesn't look like it's got a lot of people in it. How are you going to add some people to it? So what you do is you can either manually input. So you can just type people's email addresses in here. And this is fine if you've got 3 or 4 people. Yeah. But if you've got like hundreds of email addresses, then there is a template that you can upload, and I'll show you that in a second. Now, if we want to, we can add first names and last names. We don't have those very often. You might, but maybe you don't. You only really need the email address in there. But what you can also do, and so I'll just expand this a little bit, you can also add fields here. So you can sort of go, all right, embedded data one. So I might add something like, where from? All right. So where did this person come from? Have they contacted me? Whether did they take part in another study? Something like that. Something that allows me to potentially target these people. Or maybe if I've used them, like I've randomly allocated them to groups already outside of the study or in an early wave of the study, I might add a variable called group. And so when I add someone in here, I can say this person is in group one, right? And I know them from emailed me, for example. All right. So you can add all sorts of extra fields in here. And I've got a panel of research participants where I've actually added in a lot of their data from their previous surveys so that I can target them in the future. So that I can go, all right, if I want to target all the people who are 18 to 39 and male and they've told me in the past they take part in sports betting, then I have that information in my list and I can use that to only send it to certain people. All right. So this is the really, like, a lot of people feel like I can only have this one external data reference here. You can have as many variables in here as you like, and my directory actually probably has a couple of hundred. So really, important information that you can store in here, which allows targeting. All good so far? All right. So once I've added a few people in, I'm just going to add just one for now. And there's my one person. And this can take, like you see, it's sort of completing some tasks here. It's importing the contacts. That can take a moment for your directory to appear here. And that'll just take a second. So I can just get rid of that. And if I want to, I can go and add more contacts. And now I've got some list options as well, where I can play around with some things. I can rename it. I can get rid of this list if it's no longer useful, those sorts of things. The other thing I can do here is if I do have a list of people, say email addresses, I can upload them as a CSV. And I've tried in the past to just put email addresses into like an Excel file and upload it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The easiest thing to do is to download the sample template here, which is in the format that Qualtrics is expecting. All right. And when you download that, it looks like this. You've got, here we go. So first name, last name, email address, external data. You can have numbers in here if you want to, or words, or whatever you want it to be. This is just an embedded data field. And then anything else you want, so we might have like all of those embedded data fields that we've got. So I can take this and then I'll just clear this out and I'll set my label, which I friggin' hate. Downloads, I'll call it that. I'll say save and I'll call this, public because who cares? And I'll add some email addresses in here. Add another one for me, and I'll get rid of these ones because I don't really want those. All right, so I've saved that. And then I can drag and drop it in here and that will upload as well. All right. And this one is saying, all right, so I've got a problem here because the headers that I've set up, I've added those additional ones like group and those things. Like I've already got a contact in the group, in the list. That's not, they have to align perfectly. So let me go back and I will just set up a new one and just do the upload with that. So what am I doing? I'm going to create one more new list. Demo upload. All right, and this time I'm uploading a file. I'll download the template again, and I'm just going to upload the template straight back in just to make life a little bit more easy. There you go. Now it's looking good. And it might take a second there. All right. And this is where you can map your variable names with, like, so there's one there which is called first name, and it's smart enough to go, that's the field which is going to be a person's first name. Department, that doesn't feel like an email address or a first name, so I'm going to call this an embedded data type. And so there's various other types of data that you can have in here. Most of the additional ones that you're going to add in are embedded data. Okay, so all good so far? Cool. And I showed you some examples from the list just to make sure you know what those variables are. All right, so again, that'll just take a second to upload, but those are the two main ways to get people into lists. So you can either manually import them, which you're not going to do very often, or you can, copy them into a CSV, set up your headers where you want them to be, and then just define it the first time you add them. Once you've got them in there, you can always add new variables as well. Obviously, if you've got a list of 1,000 people and adding, one new variable with like a value for everyone is going to be a bit of a pain. But you can always adjust these things once they're in there too. All right. Hi, Selena. So I'll go back to that one that I manually set up, and I'll show you what you can do with a contact once they're in there. There we go. So you can see things like you can add variables in here. You could change someone's email address. Hey, so I'm just showing you everyone about like setting up contact lists in the first place. Then we're going to start using them for distributions in a little bit, so you can catch up on the recording when for the bits you missed. Cool. And then if we learn someone's first name, we can add it in too. So there's lots of stuff here that we can do. There are things like a sense of, how much they've engaged with you in the past. So this person hasn't done anything, hasn't taken part in any surveys. There's a thing about what lists they're in. And there's also things like statistics, like how many surveys they've done for you. The last time they were actually invited, the last time they responded. And this kind of stuff is really useful as well for if you want to say, I only want to contact people, not very often. So if I sent out like a distribution last month, I don't want to contact the people who responded to that one. So there's lots of that sort of metadata that's being captured here, which you can use for targeting later on. Yeah, so any questions about setting up lists there? It's not particularly difficult, I hope. Is that all right?
This may be something you're about to talk about, possibly. But is there a way to if people are doing a survey, and they put their email into the survey, can you create a list, like have it create a list from that?
That's what
as
we're
well?
just about to do. Yeah.
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 I had a feeling that might be the case, but I thought I'd ask anyway.
No, it's good. I'm glad you asked. So there we go, collecting contacts during a survey. So let me show you how this works. So this is the thing where we used to use contact list triggers very often. And these days we now use workflows. So I've set up a survey. I've set up a demo, which is over here. And I've got it all set up, but I'll set it up again for you to sort of show you how it works. So the most important part, obviously, is that we need to have a survey that actually captures their email address or however we want to contact them. Now you can ask all sorts of questions here, and it really depends, obviously, on how well you know these people and everything. So this is often included at the end of a survey. So hey, you've taken part in the survey. Would you like to take part in the next one? If it's important for people to take part in multiple waves of the study, then you maybe want to make this at the start of the survey so that, you're not wasting people's time. They don't complete the first survey and then go, oh, you want my email address? Oh, I don't want to take part anymore. So where you place this and what other information you capture, like their, first and last name, for example, will depend a little bit on the nature of your study. But one way or another, we want to have email address in here. And what we'll sometimes want to have is a thing where they explicitly opt in to be contacted for future surveys too. And this is the kind of thing that we can capture into our contact list as well. So, we know who to contact. The other thing is people put loads of typos in email addresses. And there's only so much guarding you can do around that. But what you can do is you can ask them to, please reconfirm your email address. So I'll just show you how to set up the question too. All right. So when we, capture an email address question, I'll call this something like email confirm. All right. And I might put a page break after this. So I want to make this a text entry question. So that means that they're typing text. I want to make this for an email address, a single line. I will add requirements here, which is forced response, if I need them to answer this question. If I want to make it optional for them to give me their email address, maybe it's okay. If they don't want to do that, then I don't turn on forced response. So I just turn that off again, but I'll leave that on. And here, I want to add validation. So I want it to be an email address. So it's like content type. And it will, there's a bunch of different options here. It's really good for things like postcodes. And it will say, it'll set up for Australian postcodes. So there's a bunch of validation here that you can use. But in this case, obviously, we want an email address. I'm just getting distracted on a tangent. Never mind me. So we've got the email address being captured twice. So that gives us like a fighting chance of them maybe doing a typo in one and getting it right in the second. We can always set up like custom validation where the email addresses have to match. This is doable, but I find that it really annoys people and they can drop out here too. So, but what we can do with that is we need to say their email address, whatever they type in here, has to equal, and then we need the piped text for whatever they've typed in here. So I need to get that somewhere. So I will add pipe text for whatever they said in the email address question, all right, which is this value here. And then I don't want it there. I just need to actually capture the pipe text. I'll go into validation and I will say this question will pass as long as whatever they type in this question is equal to that piped text, all right? And then I have to set an error message, which would say, so I'll do a new one. I'll call it emails don't match. And I will put it uncategorized. And I'll say if the error text that I want to use is that the email addresses that you have entered do not match, please check them so we can contact you. All right. So there we go. We've got error text and now I can save that. So you can do that if you want to. That's how you can, set it up so that two email addresses have to match for them to be able to move forward in the survey. And let's just have a look at what this looks like if they go through it. So I'll do this in preview. So the first question should be this one. So I'll get it right the first time and then I'll get it wrong. Oops, that's not a valid email address, so that won't pass. And then I'll get it wrong the second time or different. And this shouldn't validate. There you go. It's saying the addresses don't match. All right. So you can do that if you want. It really depends on your audience. Like if they're going to get a bit skittish with like, no, I don't know how to pass this or whatever, maybe consider ruling this out and just allow a few people to drop out if their emails are wrong. It depends on your use. But okay, so we've got that set up. We are capturing their email address. All right. And in this case, we're actually confirming it. So how do I do the thing where I add them into a directory? So we're going to use a thing here called workflows. All right. And when I click on this, I've actually already got one set up for this. And I think when you see this screen, it'll just be blank. But I'll talk you through the steps of setting it up because it's very simple. All right. And you can have multiple workflows for a survey too. So you could have one workflow to add them to the directory, and then you could have another workflow to send them the next survey in a week's time, for example. So you could build those things that way as well. So I'm going to create a workflow, and there's different ways that workflows work. These are really powerful and can do lots of different things. But the idea of the workflow is here are the steps that you need. And again, these slides will be up in the team. So I'll go, this is started when an event is received. So the way that workflows work, there are three things that you need. There's like a trigger, what starts the workflow working. You can have conditions, what it is that, like who this workflow might apply to. So, we've got that question in there, do you want to be contacted in the future? Maybe we add a condition that only people who have consented to that are added to the list. And then you have what the event, like what actually happens when the workflow goes through. And that would be adding them to the list. So when we click on this, we need to define an event for starters, and we can just go with a survey response. And you can see there's a bunch of other things that we can use here because Qualtrics is a really broad platform that can be used for lots of different things. But I'm going to set it up for a survey response. Unfortunately, there's not very much I need to change here. Like by default, it's when there's a newly created response. That's when someone completes a survey. And you can set it up so that you can allow incomplete responses. So if someone's gotten up to this point of answering this email question, you could import them too, as long as that makes sense from an ethics perspective and all that kind of thing. All right, but I'm going to leave it at this, newly created responses. And there's some other bits down here that you can do in terms of translations and stuff that doesn't apply to us. Okay, so I've set it up so that my trigger, the start of my workflow, is when someone completes the survey. And excuse me. And then I can either add a task or a decision. And the one I'm going to use here is a task. And this is what happens when they complete the survey. Now, there's loads and loads and loads of things in here, and the one I'm looking for down the bottom is XM directory. So XM directory is the Qualtrics name for the directory lists, all that sort of stuff feature. XM stands for experience management, which is what we are dealing with. They have some other products that are a little different too. But XM directory is what we're after, and you see it says add contact info. So I'll do that. And it'll say, what do you want to do at this point? And I will say, I want to add them to an XM directory. It'll say, cool. Do you want to put them in a list? Which list do you want to put them in? So I'll go and find like one of the ones that I've set up. Now I've got a lot of lists here. So I'm going to add, like I can do a search for one of the demos. And I'll just select the one called demo. It's a different one to what I was using before. And then I can do the thing where I can define fields. So which question or where should their email address come from? So this comes from a survey question. It's email address, and it's whatever they entered in email address. Question text would just store the bit of the question that says, what is your email address? Whereas this bit actually stores their response, the email address that they've put in. Okay. So cool, that's that bit that will go in my directory. And if I want to, I can add additional fields. So these are these custom embedded data fields, like those ones I showed you before that I typed in manually, which I can't remember what they were, like group and where from. So here I might have that question on, would you like us to contact you in the future for surveys? So I would say whatever they selected there, which is either yes, please, or no, thank you. And I will call this like, future contact or something like that. Okay. So that's how you can add in whatever extra variables you want. Like it might be demographics, or it might be if they meet a certain criterion, like, do they experience problems with gambling, or, have they made their 10,000 steps target, all those kind of things. So I'll do close. And then I don't think there's anything else I really need to change down here. The one thing you could do is add it as a new transaction for your contacts. Like, I've had contact with these people as part of this. But I'm going to assume that here because it is like assume they've been added to the list. So I must have had contact with them. So I'll do save, and then that's it. All right, so I've got my workflow set up, and that's how you automatically add people to your demo list or to your contact list as they complete the survey. All right, so this is fantastic for the kind of stuff that you might do where you chuck like a survey out via social media or something like that, but you want to get their contact details to contact them into the future. All right. And then as more and more people come in, this will automatically run. Now, workflows are really powerful. You could add another task here. You could add a thing like emailing people, into the future. So like with XM directory, or there's send a message. Here we go. We can send, a survey via email, and we could delay that for a week. So we could say, all right, this person finished this survey at this time. 1 week later, I want to send them a follow-up, or the next survey or whatever. So this is really useful for like EMA type designs where you're sending people a string of surveys over time. And so we often do this. So you could send an email, and I'm going to talk about setting up to send an email in a sec as well. All right. So you just you set up the next survey, and you select that from the list of surveys, and that's what's going to appear here. And you can select a delay as well. So I won't go through all that at the moment. It's not too hard to work out. All right. But that's workflows. So that's how you set that bit up. So any questions about anything there? It's pretty easy, I think. All right. Let's go to actually sending emails. Now, there are some settings that you need to do. So by default, if we send an email to people in my contact list, then what will happen is they will receive it from an email address like no reply at qemailserver.com or something. And it looks super spammy, So they have set up default emails, but what you want to do is set it up so that it's sending from your email address. So to do this, we go into account settings, and there's this new fancy account settings, which doesn't actually have what we want. So we need to go to the older version, which is this link up here. And here, I'd suggest that you do two things. The first thing I suggest you do is set your time zone, so that all responses are stored in your local time. Because when there are responses in Qualtrics, you can set up timestamps and these sorts. It's automatically saves timestamps about what date and time it happened. And by default, Qualtrics is from Utah. So it will set up in the Utah time zone, and that's really annoying, in terms of working out when someone actually took the survey. So then the other thing we need to set up is these user email defaults down here. And I'm going to point out, like, as you'll see there, my email address has this surveys component in it. So let me just talk about that for a sec. My email address is a.m.russell@cqu.edu.au. IT, TASAC, has this thing about allowing people to send directly from the cqu.edu.au. We've set it up so that Qualtrics is allowed to send from our email addresses, but TASAC want a bit of control over that, and they've made it so that you have to include this surveys dot component in there. Now, so that's what people will see, a.m.russell@surveys.cqu.edu.au. If they reply to it, it will just go into your normal inbox. Like, you don't need to set up a different inbox or anything like that. This is some IT restriction that I don't understand. But, they think it's really important, so we did it. The worst part about this, though, is that we don't have an equivalent for students. So the students with their cqumail.com addresses don't work very well here. The surveys bit doesn't work. And I've tried over and over again with TASAC, and I just keep hitting this. It's too hard. It's a different system. It doesn't work like that, So if you are working with an undergraduate student, remember that postgraduate students get a CQU email address, like an affiliate account. So they'll be able to use their CQU email address. But if you're dealing with undergraduate students, I would recommend that you send it yourself from your email address, which means that it needs to be hosted in your email account. Okay. All right. So that's how you set all that up. And once you've got that set up here, then anytime you go and try to send a survey, it will send from that email address rather than the default, like, no reply at qemailserver.com. And so that makes it look a little more legitimate, even though the surveys thing isn't what most people see in their email addresses. It's still got the cqu.edu.au thing at the end. All right, let's go and send an email. So I will get out of here. I'll go back to my projects. When I want to send a survey via an email to a list, these are the steps that I work through. So I'll find that one, demo survey for distribution. This is one that I've just created a survey. You would obviously have a lot of questions in here. Let me talk about how we send this now. So what you are probably all very aware of with distributions is that you can use this to get your anonymous link. And this is the link that you use to send out your survey. All right. Now, from here, you'll see there's a whole bunch of other options that we can use. So one is emails. And that's the one that we want because generally we will be sending them via emails, not so much SMS. I'm going to show you an option for SMS in a sec. So what we need to do is we need to compose an email. All right. And once we go into here, notice it's got all my like CQU addresses and things like that set up because I set them up in my defaults there. You can still change this. You can change this to CQ University or put something like that on the end or get rid of the, a prof if you think it looks a bit wanky or whatever. You can do all that. But this is what will appear when they see the email. So it's often really good to, put something here. With the subject, be aware of spammy kind of words as well, like free prize draw or whatever, is the kind of thing where people will look at that in their inbox and go, so you might need to remind them, it's, for CQU study, whatever it is, and ideally let them know in advance that it's coming. Okay, so I've set that up like CQU study, gambling or whatever. If I've got I can set up messages, that I will regularly use if you want to. If you're going to send it out to a few different lists, maybe set up your message here and then save it to your library there, and you can use it over and over again. I would also suggest looking at doing things like putting in some CQU branding, So I've got a whole bunch of images here that I have used, in the past for surveys, and I've got a CQU logo. I might put that up the top. If I've got branding like 10,000 steps or whatever, I might put that at the top just to try and make it look a little more legitimate. If it's just a boring text email that gets through, you're going to have issues. Now, this includes a bunch of text here. So most important parts are the survey link, and it will fill these in automatically for you, So this one will say the words, take this survey with a hyperlink that will take you through to the survey. Now, but this is text, so you can accidentally destroy this by putting in spaces and it won't work, or anything else. So be really careful. But you can add things. So you can go say hi, and then if you happen to have their first names, you could pull that through from an embedded data field in your list, right? So recipient first name. Okay, if you know their first names. All right. Then you can say, thanks for your interest in our work. Here's the latest survey. It will take about 10 minutes. Obviously, make it nicer than this. I'm just showing you can fill in some text. And then you might say, thanks, Alex, if you have any problems, please reply to this email, something along those lines. Make this nicer. You're talking to people who are volunteering their work and all that kind of thing. But the point is you can insert all this text around this pre-filled stuff here. The other part that's really important is this unsubscribe stuff. If you take that out, Qualtrics will actually object. See, it'll go no opt-out link, don't like it. And that's actually the kind of thing that makes it much more likely for these things to be caught up with spam. All right. Same with putting words in there like free prize draw or whatever is the kind of stuff that's going to make this get caught in spam. So, agonize over the wording that you put in here. If you have any images in here and you're like, I need to, change the size of that, you could do that. I could make that 100 high and it'll make it a little bit smaller. You can do all those sorts of things too. And once I've got this set up, I might do, all right, I want to save this to my library and I'm going to call this demo invite, for example, but you might call it the name of your study, right? In case you're going to use it over and over again. So I'll save that and then that's there. That's the one that I'm using. You can have multiple versions of these too. All right, so that's almost ready to go. What I can then do is I highly recommend setting all of this up before you add your list. And the reason is because if you add your list and accidentally hit the send button and it's like half done, that looks pretty crappy to your participants. I don't know about you. When I'm typing the important email, I don't have the email address in there in case I accidentally send too early. So it's just like little things like that, because I can guarantee you I have accidentally sent a half typed email to 1,000 participants via Qualtrics. Don't be me. All right, but I can choose my list. So I can go in here and here are my lists. And again, I can search for the one that I'm looking for. And when I go into that, so where's demo with contacts, right? So this is one I have set up. I've got 3 of my email addresses set up in here. I can select individuals if I want. I can select a sample out of this if I want, or I can just select the entire contact list. So this is where I do different lists. I might do an initial send to 100 people just to make sure it's fine, and then send it to the rest of the list after that once I'm happy with it. All right, so I'm going to send that to the list. It's just going through and adding the 3 people, and now I can select either send preview email or send in 1 hour. There are some advanced options here in terms of link types and, do you want the link to expire after a certain amount of time? Maybe you don't. This is the survey link. I recommend leaving these as they are, unless you really want the link to go for longer, but you really probably want to do that with like follow-ups instead. Okay. Now, send preview email sounds like it's the kind of thing where it sends you a sample of what the email is going to look like. But instead, what it does is it sends an email with the link to the preview version of the survey, like that one I showed you where I was demoing putting in the 2 email addresses and the little mobile phone. That's not the one you want your participants to do, right? You want to send the proper email here. So don't do this button. It's a little confusing. All right. You can choose to send it immediately. You can choose to send it in an hour or 6 hours or at a custom time, this date at this time, whatever you want to do. Okay. So I'm going to send this immediately. So just before I click send, I always have a quick look over it. Is this my right list? Yep. That's not an actual list of people. That's me every time. It's from me. Wording's okay. All looks okay. All right. So let's send it now. All right. So that is sent. And now I see, this like a thing here where I can see what's going on. So this is what I sent out to people. This is the distribution I sent. What's happened? So 3 emails have been sent, and I can feel them coming through on my watch. So let me go and have a look. All right, and here's one of the emails that came through. So it says hi, and it hasn't captured the first name here. So that bit has failed, and this is why I always like to do some tests. So we'll go back in and have a look at that. But here's the take the survey, here's the full link, here's the unsubscribe, here's the CQU logo. Here it is coming from my A dot, it might be hard to see there, but coming from me at my CQU email address. So I want to go back into that and try and work out what I won't worry about the first name stuff because I think I know we hadn't actually linked the list yet when I did that. But while I'm here as well, I want to show you, I'm mindful of time. I want to move on to some other things, but I'll have a look back at that and put it in the Teams chat. I can schedule a reminder. So here we go. I can say, I want to send this in 7 days and it will go to unfinished respondents. This is anyone who has not completed the survey. They might have started it and not finished it, or they might have not started it at all. So often reminders are a good little thing here. And look, I've got to type out all the text again, or I can just go to that one that I did. This isn't working very well. There's a little glitch in the interface. See, it's not loading the messages very well. So I'm going to have to work on that. I'm going to have to tell Qualtrics about that. But you can, schedule reminders here. You can also schedule thank yous. So a thank you message is pretty obvious. You just say, hey, thanks for taking the survey. And that might also be something where you send them rewards to if you're automating that. So let's say it's your, gift vouchers or whatever. So yeah, that's doing the actual distribution. Any questions about anything there? All good? Okie dokie. Emailing our directory, that's fine. So there's one more thing here that I sometimes use in distributions, and that's this thing called personal links. And I want to explain what I'm doing here first before I show you how to do it. So when we use an anonymous link, everybody gets the same survey link. And so we don't know who's actually completed it. But with personal links, what we can do is we can send people individual links to the survey so I can link that to a particular person. Now, I use this when sometimes I send SMSs or whatever, as well as emails, and I want to be able to track who's completed it. And so personal, like I can send SMSs from within Qualtrics. We haven't really solved how to charge people at CQU for using SMSs in Qualtrics. So we've got to sort of work something out there. But I often use third-party SMS providers. And I'll send everybody like their own individual survey link that I know is linked to their phone number. And so personal links allow me to do this. And the way that a personal link works is this idea. So we can customize the survey URL. So I don't know how much you know about this. The idea is, let's say we've got our full survey link, which is this bit, this whole survey link. So let me grab this one. I'll just copy this one as an example. You can add embedded data onto the end of it. And you start that with a question mark. And then you might add a variable name, whatever that equals. And then you can add more. You do the first one is always a question mark. And then all the rest are adds. So you can say gender equals 2 and age equals 18 and, as many of these things as you want. And that's how a personal link works as well. Everyone gets their own URL with a little addition on the end of it. So I want to generate personal links for my contact list. So my demo with contacts list. All right, so I'll select the entire list. I'm going to say I want them to expire in 60 days. And this will create an individual link that I can then link to each person. All right, so that's just created that for me. And this is a really powerful tool because we want to be able to, track people. So here's what it looks like. Here's the directory contacts and their contact IDs. And here is their custom link. So you see it's got the survey URL and then it's got question mark and then embedded data starts from there. And each person has their own custom link that we can then use in third-party programs. Like I might want to email people from Outlook instead of within Qualtrics, for example. And this is how I can still use my contact list and link their responses to their user accounts, right? I've still got to, add in workflow triggers to sort of update their transactions and things to say that they've completed it. But this is another really useful use of directories here. I've got 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to see what else I've got to talk about and see if you've got any questions. The other thing is when you do these custom links here, when you have these, so you can do that for anything. So let's say I want to carry across from survey to survey what group someone is in. Let's say I've randomly allocated people to 2 different groups or 3 different groups or whatever. And I want that to carry across from survey to survey. So I've got it in the data or I can use it in survey flow. I can add that onto survey links as well. All right. So question mark for the first one, then ands for all the following ones. But we do need to capture it within the next survey as well. So I have actually set this up in here. It wasn't this one, but here's how you set it up. So let's say I've got a thing called group and I've got a thing called gender, and I'm trying to capture those in the next survey. So I'm sending people the link to this survey, and I want it to have whatever group they're in or whatever gender they are. All right, I need to actually capture that in survey flow in embedded data. Okay, so that needs to also be the first thing in my survey flow. It's misbehaving. There we go. So if I send people this distribution, right, I would go to this link here, the anonymous link, all right, or the personal links, and I would add some more things on the end. Okay, so I would go, I want to send people this address and group equals whatever it is for this person. This could also be pipe text. I've got a lot more on these personalized links in another video, which I'll link to. So let's say it is some pipe text or just group equals one. Or I might use this for something like, channel equals Facebook. So I might have like a link that I use for Facebook and another one for Twitter or whatever, so that I know where people are coming from. So this kind of custom URL is really useful too, and that's how those personal links work. All right, what else have I got to show you? The reporting I've shown you. So, when you go into distributions, once you've sent something, you can go into your emails and see what's happening. And 0 have started because they were all sent to me and I'm busy talking to you. And I've shown you how to set up reminders and thank yous and everything here too. Is there anything else I want to show you? I don't think so. I think that's sort of most of what I've got for today. There's one other little technical thing I might mention, which is that typically survey links or attempts are set to expire under responses. Yeah. How much time should they have before they're considered incomplete at 1 week? So if you're scheduling your reminder at a point where they're going to try and recomplete or finish it after that period is over, that's not going to work. So when I talked about setting up the reminder and setting it at 7 days, if someone started and then stopped straight away, and then you send the reminder and the survey closes after 7 days for them, but then you send them a reminder 7 days, they might get this reminder for a survey that they then can't complete. So consider setting this longer and making your reminders more frequent to make sure you don't run into that issue. Okay. Now, the other thing, just to note quickly, is that when you get your data, it will link in their name and their email address too from the directory. This can be really useful, but it does mean that your data are not particularly anonymous. So you might need to mention that to ethics, that at the point of data collection, the data are not anonymous, but that and it depends on what you're getting participants to agree to, but you might anonymize it before you use it for analysis. Ethics is understanding of these things. I'm just flagging in terms of ethics issues. So that's what I've got. Was there some stuff here that you didn't know? That's what I want to know for starters. Is there stuff here that you might use?
This was particularly timely, Alex. You've answered a lot of things that I was like, I wonder if Qualtrics can do that. So that's really good.
Remember, I'm just scratching the surface. Like there is I can show you the tools and then you need to work out how you want to use them. So I'm glad it's useful. And you've got some ideas here, but how you set that up will really depend on what you're looking to do with your study. And like I said, contact lists are particularly useful for that. I'm going to follow particular people up over time. And segments are going to be really useful as well. So setting up a segment for, let's say you've got like a 7-wave study, and once someone misses a wave, they may not be eligible for future waves. You can add a segment, all right, who completed the first survey? And then you put those people into a second segment, all right, who's completed the second, we send them the second survey, right? Who's completed that one? Those go into the third segment, So there are those sorts of things that really depend on how you're setting up the study, that in terms of how you implement them. But there's a lot of really powerful tools in here, which is pretty good. Anyone got any questions?
Yeah, not a question really, but I think the workflow is really of interest to me,
Yeah.
and still trying to work around how I can utilize it a bit more. So maybe I will have to create more time to do that myself, but at least with the explanation today, I should be able to start on that.
Yeah, I think there's loads of things in here, but it's also the kind of thing that can quickly become overwhelming because there's a lot of stuff that's not relevant to us. Like we don't do Zendesk stuff. Zendesk is like contacting Tasak, and you get that automated thing. That doesn't apply to us. So what I would like highly recommend is focusing on the bits that are directly relevant to you and starting there.
Yeah.
There are also, though, remember that there is the Qualtrics community, and this is a group of users who use all sorts of pretty fancy stuff actually in Qualtrics, and they go in there and answer questions. Now, you might find that there are questions in here that people haven't answered. These are all volunteers, right? These people aren't paid. But there are lots of examples here in terms of, using workflows and how people have done it, or a question about how they've done it. So I would recommend looking through this as well as an example of like some ideas of what you might do. GPT is actually surprisingly useful here too. And other AIs will be good with this as well. You can go, here's what I want to do, and it can help you set it up, but it's not always up to date on the latest things, like contact list triggers being deprecated, for example. So just be aware that, it might tell you to do some things which isn't quite right. And of course, Qualtrics support is a great place to go here. So I'd recommend, if you're looking at doing workflows, reaching out to them as well. Yeah, but workflow's super, super powerful for the kind of thing where you are, linking things together. You can do things like automating data exports and then tying that in with automated analysis, dashboards, all those sorts of things too. So there's lots of pretty cool things here.
Right. Thank you.
No worries. Um, Maybe we'll do workflows in the future. But while I've got you here, the people who attend get a say. What else would you like me to cover in these sorts of things? I'll put it out to the group as well, but what else might you like to see?
Workflows.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. And look, we will, that's fine. But there's plenty more that we can talk about here as well. So this would be where it's really useful. Like again, what I'm looking for from the group a bit here is to go and talk to your users, like your groups and the kind of things that you're trying to achieve, or the kind of things that you don't know if are possible. And then I can show you how they probably are, because just about everything is. So that's what I want this to be. Like, come to me with issues. Like I'll come up with some things that I'll talk through as well. I haven't really, like, I wanted to get a sense of what you might like to cover. Maybe we can do something with workflows. Let's look at what we can do there. But yeah, I think we've got plenty of stuff that we can work through. So yeah, I'm going to aim to do one or two more before the end of the year. And like I said, I might open this up to anyone who wants to come. I'll put it out through like the researchers list, for example, and let's see how we go. Is that okay? Like, I did have this like in mind as a bit of an exclusive group, but I'm also mindful that, with this second time, a lot of people haven't been able to make it, and will watch videos instead, which is sort of fine, but I want to get this to spread as far and wide as possible. So yeah. Well, cool. I might actually put the videos on YouTube as well, because then others can see it. Are you all comfortable with your face being on YouTube?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that right?
I didn't have a problem with that.
Thank you. All right. If you're uncomfortable and you want to email me and say, please don't do that, that's fine. I'll work out how to block you out or something. All righty. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
All good. And yeah, keep sending through stuff. I know, Annetta, I've been a little slow to respond to a couple of things. I'm sorry.
Yeah, look, the mobile intercept was probably the main one for us, but since we
Yeah.
can't do that,
No,
because
no,
we
no.
use the web intercept,
Yeah.
and it's
So
amazing.
yeah, but that's something that I am pushing. So my contact with Qualtrics is actually leaving the uni, so I've got which is probably kind of good because he's been slow to reply to things. He's a lovely guy, but I haven't always had great responses or timely responses. So I've got a new contact there, and I will explore that to see if that works a little bit better for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I want to add more stuff. Yeah, the timelines might be a little tricky because we understand that the capital side of things has just been approved, so it's hard to get new money to add stuff on. I also don't know how much it costs, is the other side that I'm missing. Like if it was $10,000, fine. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that
Okay,
sounds good.
cool.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Go and have a
Thanks,
lovely
Alex.
weekend. Thanks for showing up, and I'll talk to you all very soon.
Sounds good.
All
Cheers.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.